The pills were supposed to help me. Instead, they nearly put me in a grave right next to my aunt. My name is Margaret, and I'm 58 years old. I've lived what most people would call an ordinary life. I raised 2 children, worked as a school librarian for 30 years, buried a husband I loved deeply, and spent my retirement years trying to find peace in a too-quiet house. But 3 years ago, ordinary turned into a nightmare I never saw coming. A nightmare that started with an act of kindness and ended with me fighting for my life. It began the day my Aunt Lorraine died. She was 74, vibrant and sharp as a tack right up until the end. Or at least that's what I thought. Aunt Lorraine had been more than just family to me. After my mother passed when I was 16, Lorraine stepped in. She came to my high school graduation, helped me pick out my wedding dress, held my hand through 2 difficult pregnancies, and sat beside me at my husband Tom's funeral when I was 53 and suddenly alone in the world. We talked on the phone every Sunday without fail. She'd tell me about her garden, her book club, her neighbors. I'd tell her about my daughter Jessica's nursing career, and my son Michael's life out in California. We'd laugh about getting older, about aching joints and forgetting where we put our reading glasses. Normal things. Family things. So when I got the call that Aunt Lorraine had died in her sleep, my world tilted sideways. Just like that, without warning, without a chance to say goodbye. The funeral was on a gray October afternoon with rain that felt like tears from heaven itself. I stood at her graveside, clutching a tissue, feeling more alone than I had since Tom died. That's when I first really noticed Belinda. Belinda was Aunt Lorraine's stepdaughter from her second marriage. Lorraine had married George when I was already grown and living my own life, so I'd only met Belinda a handful of times at holidays and family gatherings. She was about my age, maybe a year or 2 younger, with dyed blonde hair and a smile that never quite reached her eyes. We'd always been cordial but never close. Different lives, different circles. At the funeral, Belinda was everywhere. Greeting guests, organizing the reception, playing the devoted daughter. She hugged me tight after the service, her perfume overwhelming. "Margaret, I'm so glad you're here. Mom loved you so much. You were like a real daughter to her." Something about the way she said real daughter bothered me, but I pushed the feeling aside. This was a funeral. Everyone was emotional. I was probably just being sensitive. After most of the guests had left, Belinda pulled me aside in Aunt Lorraine's kitchen. The house still smelled like her lavender sachets and the lemon cookies she used to bake. Being there without her felt wrong, like trespassing. "Margaret, I wanted to talk to you about something," Belinda said, pouring us both coffee I didn't want. "Mom would have wanted you to have this." She handed me a brown paper bag. Inside were 4 prescription bottles, all with Aunt Lorraine's name on the labels. I pulled one out and read it. Pills for blood pressure. Another for cholesterol. A third I didn't recognize. "I don't understand," I said. "Why would I need Lorraine's medications?" Belinda leaned in conspiratorially. "Mom told me before she died that you were having some of the same health issues she had. High blood pressure, cholesterol problems, trouble sleeping. She said you mentioned it on the phone, but that you were putting off going to the doctor because of the cost." That part was true. I had mentioned those things. My blood pressure had been creeping up, and my last checkup showed my cholesterol was higher than it should be. My doctor wanted me to start medication, but the prescriptions were expensive even with Medicare, and I was trying to stretch my fixed income as far as it would go. "Mom wanted you to have her medications," Belinda continued. "She had just refilled all of these the week before she died. They're practically brand new. It seems wasteful to just throw them away when they could help you. Mom would have wanted that." I looked at the bottles again, uncertain. "I don't know, Belinda. These were prescribed specifically for Lorraine. Shouldn't I talk to my own doctor first?" "Of course you should eventually," she said quickly. "But in the meantime, why suffer? These are the same medications your doctor probably would have prescribed anyway. Blood pressure medication is blood pressure medication. And it would make Mom happy to know she could still take care of you even now." That got me. The idea that I could honor Lorraine's memory by accepting this gift she'd supposedly wanted me to have. It felt like one last connection to her, one last way she was looking out for me. "I suppose it wouldn't hurt," I said slowly. "Just until I can afford to see my doctor and get my own prescriptions." Belinda's smile widened. "That's wonderful. Mom would be so pleased. Here, let me write down the dosing schedule for you." Mom was very particular about when she took each pill. She grabbed a notepad from Lorraine's junk drawer and wrote out detailed instructions. 2 of the small white pills in the morning with breakfast. 1 of the blue capsules at lunch. 2 of the yellow tablets at dinner. 1 pink pill before bed. This seems like a lot, I commented, counting the bottles again. Mom had a lot of issues, Belinda said. But she managed them well. She was doing great right up until the end. Peaceful in her sleep, that's how we should all go. I took the bag home that evening. My daughter Jessica came over to check on me, bringing soup she'd made and a container of cookies from the bakery I liked. Jessica was 34, married to a good man named Robert, and worked as an ICU nurse at County General. She was practical and no nonsense, just like her father had been. "How are you holding up, Mom?" she asked, heating the soup in my kitchen. "As well as can be expected. It just doesn't feel real yet." "I know. Aunt Lorraine was special. We're all going to miss her." Jessica stayed for dinner and we talked about memories of Lorraine. How she used to let me and my cousins make a mess in her kitchen baking Christmas cookies. How she sent birthday cards that always arrived exactly on time with a $5 bill tucked inside, no matter how old you were. How she gave the best hugs, the kind that made you feel safe and loved. After Jessica left, I stood in my bathroom looking at the 4 prescription bottles Belinda had given me. The logical part of my brain said I should call my doctor first, make an appointment, do this the right way. But the other part, the part that was grieving and tired and didn't want to face the hassle and expense of doctor's visits, said that Belinda was right. These were common medications. What harm could they do? I took the first doses that night. 2 white pills, carefully swallowed with a full glass of water like the instructions said. They were larger than I expected and left a bitter taste on my tongue. But I'd taken plenty of pills before. This was no different. I went to bed feeling like I'd made a connection with Lorraine, like she was still watching over me somehow. I should have trusted my instincts. I should have called my doctor. I should have known that something about Belinda's too eager generosity didn't add up. But I didn't. And that mistake almost cost me everything. The first week, I didn't notice anything unusual. I took the pills according to Belinda's schedule, checking them off on a list I'd made so I wouldn't forget. Morning, noon, dinner, bedtime. Like clockwork. I even felt a little better at first, or maybe I just wanted to believe I did. Placebo effect is powerful when you're grieving and looking for comfort, anywhere you can find it. But by the second week, things started to change. It began with exhaustion. I've been tired before, of course. I'm nearly 60, I've earned the right to be tired. But this was different. This was bone-deep weariness that made getting out of bed feel like climbing a mountain. I'd sleep 9, 10 hours a night and wake up feeling like I hadn't slept at all. Jessica noticed when she called to check on me. "Mom, you sound exhausted. Are you sleeping okay?" "I'm sleeping fine," I told her, which was technically true. I was sleeping plenty. I just wasn't getting any rest from it. "I think I'm just still processing Aunt Lorraine's death. Grief is exhausting." "That's true," Jessica agreed. "But make sure you're taking care of yourself. Are you eating properly?" That was another thing. My appetite had disappeared. Food tasted like cardboard. The thought of cooking made me want to cry from fatigue. I was living on crackers and cheese, toast, simple things that required almost no effort. "I'm eating enough," I lied. "Don't worry about me, honey." But Jessica did worry. She'd inherited that from me, the worrying gene. She started calling more frequently, sometimes twice a day. Each time I assured her I was fine, that I just needed time to adjust to a world without Aunt Lorraine in it. By week 3, new symptoms appeared. Dizziness hit me randomly without warning. I'd be walking to the mailbox and suddenly the ground would tilt. I'd grab onto the fence, waiting for the world to stop spinning. Twice I nearly fell. My hands developed a tremor I couldn't control. I'd be holding a coffee cup and watch my hand shake, sloshing liquid over the rim. The worst was the confusion. I'd forget words mid-sentence. Simple words I'd used my whole life would just vanish from my brain. I'd be talking to my neighbor about her roses and suddenly couldn't remember the word for fertilizer. It was terrifying, like my mind was slowly erasing itself. I told myself it was stress, grief, getting older. All the things we tell ourselves when we don't want to face the truth that something is seriously wrong. Jessica came to visit on a Saturday afternoon in late November. I'd forgotten she was coming. When the doorbell rang, I was confused about who could be at my door. That should have been my first major warning sign. Mom! Jessica let herself in with her key when I took too long to answer. She found me sitting in my recliner, staring at the TV without really seeing it. Mom, are you okay? You look terrible. I'm fine, I said automatically, but I saw the fear flash across her face. When did you last eat something? I tried to remember. Breakfast? But what day was today? This morning, I said, though I wasn't sure if that was true. Jessica went to my kitchen and I heard her opening cupboards, the refrigerator. She came back with a worried expression. Mom, there's barely any food here. When did you last go grocery shopping? I don't know. Last week maybe. It's been longer than that. The milk in your fridge expired 2 weeks ago. She sat on the coffee table in front of me, taking my hands in hers. They were shaking. She noticed. Mom, what's going on? And don't tell me you're fine because you're clearly not. I wanted to explain, but the words jumbled in my head. I've just been tired. So, Belinda gave me pills. Jessica's nurse instincts kicked in immediately. What pills? What are you talking about? After the funeral. Aunt Lorraine's medications. Belinda said Lorraine wanted me to have them. For my blood pressure and cholesterol. You're taking Aunt Lorraine's prescription medications? Jessica's voice rose. Mom, please tell me you're joking. Belinda said it was fine. That they were the same ones my doctor would prescribe anyway. Where are they? Show me the bottles right now. I led her to the bathroom, moving slowly because the dizziness was back. Jessica grabbed all 4 bottles and read each label carefully. Her face went pale. Mom, when did you last actually see your doctor? Have you had your blood pressure checked recently? Your blood work done? Not since before Lorraine died. It's expensive and you're taking prescription medications without knowing your actual levels. Do you have any idea how dangerous that is? Jessica's voice was shaking now. These dosages might be completely wrong for your body. And some of these. Mom, did Belinda tell you what each of these pills was for? Blood pressure, cholesterol, sleeping. Jessica was already on her phone looking something up. This one is a blood thinner. Did she tell you that? And this dosage is extremely high. Mom, if your blood pressure has been normal or low, and you've been taking these. She didn't finish the sentence, but I saw the fear in her eyes. I've been taking them for 3 weeks, I whispered. Just like Belinda said. Get dressed. We're going to the emergency room right now. Jessica, I can't afford. I don't care what it costs. Mom, you could be having a medical emergency right now, and not even realize it. She grabbed my arm to help me up, and I saw tears in her eyes. Please don't fight me on this. I didn't have the energy to fight. Jessica helped me into proper clothes, grabbed the pill bottles, and drove me to County General where she worked. She called ahead from the car, talking in medical terms I didn't understand, but that made her sound professional and terrified at the same time. There was bright and loud and overwhelming. Jessica got me into a wheelchair and rushed me past the normal check-in, using her staff privileges. Within minutes, I was in a bed with nurses hooking me up to machines. What are we looking at? A doctor asked, appearing at the curtain. He was young, maybe 40, with kind eyes behind his glasses. My mother has been taking prescription medications that weren't prescribed to her, Jessica explained, her voice steady despite her shaking hands. For approximately 3 weeks. She's presenting with fatigue, dizziness, tremors, confusion, and loss of appetite. Blood pressure is 85/55. Heart rate is 48. I need a full metabolic panel, complete blood count, and we need to figure out what she's been taking. The doctor took the pill bottles from Jessica and examined them. His expression grew serious. These are all from the same pharmacy prescribed to. He checked the labels. Lorraine Mitchell. Who's that? My aunt, I said quietly. She died last month. And someone gave these to you to take? Her stepdaughter. She said Aunt Lorraine wanted me to have them. The doctor exchanged a look with Jessica. Mrs. Margaret, I'm Dr. Chun. I need to ask you some important questions. Have you been experiencing any chest pain? Shortness of breath? Unusual bleeding or bruising? Now that he mentioned it, I had noticed bruises on my arms that I didn't remember getting. Dark purple marks that seemed to appear from nowhere. Some bruising, I admitted. We need to run tests immediately, Dr. Chun said. Based on these medications and your symptoms, I'm concerned about multiple medication interactions and possible toxicity. Jessica, you did the right thing bringing her in. The next several hours were a blur of tests and needles and worried faces. They drew what felt like a dozen vials of blood. They did an EKG to check my heart. They monitored my blood pressure constantly. Jessica never left my side, holding my hand while doctors and nurses moved around us with efficient urgency. Dr. Chun came back with results late that evening. Jessica had called Robert to let him know what was happening, and my son Michael was on a flight from California. I felt guilty for causing such a commotion, for worrying everyone. Mrs. Margaret, Dr. Chun pulled up a stool beside my bed. We've gotten your test results back, and I need to be honest with you. This is serious. You've been taking several medications that have resulted in dangerous interactions. Your blood pressure is critically low. Your blood is not clotting properly because of the blood thinner, which explains the bruising. And one of the medications you've been taking can cause severe cardiac issues when combined with the others. But Belinda said they were safe, I protested weakly. I don't know who Belinda is or what her qualifications are, but she's not a doctor. These medications, even individually, should never be taken without proper medical supervision. Combined the way you've been taking them, they could have killed you. The words hung in the air. Killed you. Jessica's hand tightened on mine. What do we do now? Jessica asked, her voice professionally calm again. We need to admit her. We'll stop all the medications immediately and monitor her closely while they work out of her system. Some of them will clear quickly, but others can take days. We'll manage her symptoms and watch for any complications. The biggest risks right now are her blood pressure dropping further, or having a cardiac event. A heart attack? I asked, suddenly much more alert. It's a possibility we need to monitor for. You're stable right now, which is good. But you've been essentially poisoning yourself for 3 weeks. Your body needs time to recover. They admitted me to the cardiac unit. Jessica used her nursing connections to make sure I got a private room and the best care. My son Michael arrived the next morning, flying red-eye from San Diego. He burst into my room looking exhausted and scared, hugging me carefully like I might break. Mom, what happened? Jessica said you were taking someone else's medications. I explained everything again, feeling more foolish each time I told the story. How could I have been so naive? How could I have trusted Belinda without question? This doesn't make sense, Michael said, pacing my small room. Why would Aunt Lorraine's stepdaughter give you medications that could hurt you? I don't think she meant to hurt me, I said, though doubt was creeping in. She thought she was helping. Jessica, sitting in the chair by my bed, made a skeptical sound. Mom, I've been thinking about this all night. Something doesn't add up. I looked up some of these medications. One of them isn't even for blood pressure or cholesterol. It's for a specific heart condition. Did Aunt Lorraine have that condition? I don't know. She never mentioned anything like that. And this one, Jessica held up one of the bottles that the hospital had kept as evidence. This is a very high dose. Higher than most doctors would prescribe unless absolutely necessary. Why would Aunt Lorraine need this much? Michael stopped pacing. What are you saying, Jess? I'm saying maybe we should look into how Aunt Lorraine actually died. The thought sent ice through my veins. She died peacefully in her sleep. That's what Belinda said. Natural causes. But was there an autopsy? Jessica pressed. Was there any investigation? I don't know. I just assumed. She was 74. It seemed like natural causes. I'm going to make some calls, Michael said, pulling out his phone. I have a friend who's a lawyer. He can help us figure out what happened with Aunt Lorraine's death, and maybe look into this Belinda person. Over the next 3 days while I recovered in the hospital, my children became detectives. What they uncovered made my blood run cold. Michael's lawyer friend helped them obtain Aunt Lorraine's death certificate. Cause of death was listed as cardiac arrest, but no autopsy had been performed. In elderly people, especially those with known health conditions. Mom, all of these medications you were taking? They can all cause cardiac issues when misused or combined improperly. What if Aunt Lorraine was being given the wrong medications or wrong dosages? What if that's what actually killed her? But why? I couldn't wrap my mind around it. Why would Belinda do that? The answer came from Michael's lawyer friend. He did some digging into Lorraine's estate. What he found was disturbing. Aunt Lorraine's house was worth nearly $400,000. She had savings and investments totaling another $200,000. And according to her will, which was on file with the county, the primary beneficiary was me. Lorraine had left everything to me, with only a small bequest of $20,000 to Belinda. Mom, did you know about this? Michael asked, showing me copies of the will on his laptop. No. Lorraine never discussed her will with me. I assumed everything would go to Belinda since they'd been family for so long. Apparently not. And here's where it gets interesting. Belinda filed a claim with the probate court 2 weeks after the funeral, contesting the will. She's arguing that Lorraine wasn't in her right mind when she made you the primary beneficiary, that you exerted undue influence over her. Jessica leaned forward. And if Mom died before the estate was settled, the contested will would likely be thrown out, and as Lorraine's legal stepdaughter, Belinda would inherit everything by default. The room fell silent as we all processed this. Belinda had given me those medications knowing they could kill me. This wasn't an act of kindness or honoring Lorraine's wishes. This was attempted murder for inheritance money. We need to go to the police, Jessica said firmly. Dr. Chan supported our suspicions. When Michael explained what we'd discovered, the doctor ordered additional tests on the medications I'd been given. What he found was chilling. The pills in these bottles don't match what the labels say. Dr. Chen explained in a meeting with me, my children, and 2 police detectives who'd been called in. These labels indicate standard medications at normal dosages. But testing shows the actual pills contain much higher concentrations, and some of them have been combined with other substances. Someone deliberately altered these medications to be dangerous. Detective Rivera, a woman in her 50s with sharp eyes, leaned forward. So these weren't just Lorraine Mitchell's regular prescriptions that were mistakenly given to Margaret? No. These were intentionally modified to be harmful, potentially lethal. The other detective, a younger man named Santos, was taking notes. Mrs. Margaret, you said Belinda Mitchell gave you these pills at the funeral. Did she give them to you directly? Yes. In Aunt Lorraine's kitchen. She pulled them from a cabinet and put them in a paper bag for me. Did anyone else see this exchange? I thought back. No. Most people had already left. It was just the 2 of us. And she gave you specific dosing instructions? Yes. She wrote them down on a notepad. Detective Rivera exchanged glances with her partner. Do you still have that notepad paper? I did. It was in my purse, which Jessica had brought from home. The detective carefully placed it in an evidence bag. We'll need to get a warrant to search Belinda Mitchell's home, and to exhume Lorraine Mitchell's body for a proper autopsy, Detective Rivera said. But based on what we're seeing here, Mrs. Margaret, you're very lucky to be alive. And your aunt may not have died of natural causes after all. The investigation moved quickly once it started. Detectives obtained Lorraine's medical records and found that she'd been complaining to her doctor for months about increasing symptoms, unusual fatigue, confusion, but her doctor had attributed it to age and grief over losing her husband George 2 years earlier. They executed a search warrant on Belinda's house and found evidence that made me physically ill. Dozens of pill bottles, both empty and full. A pill crusher. Instructions printed from the internet about lethal drug combinations. And most damning of all, a journal. Detective Rivera came to the hospital to tell me what they'd found. Mrs. Margaret, I won't read you all of it because frankly it's disturbing. But Belinda kept detailed notes about how she was slowly poisoning Lorraine, what symptoms appeared, what dosages to increase. And after Lorraine died, there are entries about you. About how you were the obstacle to her inheritance. About how she planned to give you the same treatment. My hands shook as I processed this. She wrote it all down? Why would she do that? In my experience, people like this often have a need to document their actions. It gives them a sense of control or maybe pride in their own cleverness. Thank God she did, because it's going to make prosecuting her much easier. Lorraine's body was exhumed 1 week after I was discharged from the hospital. The autopsy revealed toxic levels of multiple medications in her system, just as we'd suspected. The medical examiner ruled her death a homicide. Belinda was arrested at her home. According to news reports, she screamed and cried, insisting it was all a misunderstanding, that she was just trying to help. But the evidence was overwhelming. The modified pills, the journal, the motive, and my testimony about how she'd deliberately given me medications she knew could kill me. The trial took place 6 months later. I sat in that courtroom every single day, with Jessica on one side and Michael on the other. I watched Belinda's defense attorney try to paint her as a confused woman who'd made innocent mistakes. But the prosecution, led by a fierce woman named District Attorney Paulson, systematically destroyed every argument. They showed the jury Belinda's journal entries, reading them aloud in a voice that dripped with disgust. They brought in medical experts who explained exactly how the medications had been altered and what effects they would have. They showed Lorraine's will and the financial motive. And they had me testify about how Belinda had given me those pills, how I trusted her, how I'd nearly died. The worst moment was when they showed photos of Aunt Lorraine before she died. I hadn't seen her in person for about 2 months before her death because she'd said she wasn't feeling well enough for visitors. In the photos she looked terrible. Gaunt, pale, aged beyond her years. Nothing like the vibrant woman I'd known. This is what slow poisoning looks like, the prosecutor told the jury, pointing at the photos. Belinda Mitchell did this to her own stepmother, a woman who had welcomed her into the family. And then she tried to do it to Margaret Anderson. If Margaret's daughter hadn't been a nurse, if she hadn't recognized the symptoms and gotten her mother to the hospital in time, we'd be looking at 2 murders instead of 1. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. When they came back, I gripped both my children's hands so tightly I probably hurt them. On the count of first-degree murder in the death of Lorraine Mitchell, we find the defendant guilty. Belinda gasped and started crying. Her attorney put a hand on her shoulder. On the count of attempted murder of Margaret Anderson, we find the defendant guilty. I closed my eyes and felt tears slip down my cheeks. Justice. Finally, justice. The judge sentenced Belinda to life in prison without the possibility of parole for Lorraine's murder, plus an additional 25 years for my attempted murder. She was 60 years old. She would die in prison. As they led her away, Belinda looked at me for the first time since the trial started. There was no remorse in her eyes. I looked right back at her and didn't flinch. I was alive. Lorraine's murder had been avenged. And Belinda would pay for what she'd done for the rest of her miserable life. The aftermath took longer to process than the trial. I spent months in therapy, working through the trauma of being deliberately poisoned by someone I trusted. The physical recovery was relatively quick once the medications left my system, but the emotional scars ran deep. How do you trust again after something like that? How do you accept help or kindness without wondering if there's a hidden motive? These were questions I wrestled with every day. Jessica was my rock through it all. She took a leave from work to stay with me for the first month after I got out of the hospital. She cooked my meals, went to my doctor appointments with me, held me when I had nightmares about taking those pills. Mom, you're going to get through this. She told me one night when I was having a particularly hard time. You're the strongest woman I know. You survived something that would have killed most people. And you helped make sure Belinda will never hurt anyone else. I should have known, I said, for probably the 100th time. I should have questioned it more. You trusted family. That's not a weakness, that's being human. Belinda is the one who betrayed that trust, not you. Slowly, with therapy and the support of my children, I began to heal. I learned to recognize that while Belinda had been evil, most people aren't. That kindness is still real even if it's sometimes manipulated by bad people. That trust is a gift worth giving, even if it's occasionally broken. About a year after the trial, I did something I'd been putting off. I visited Aunt Lorraine's grave. It was a beautiful spring day, warm with flowers blooming around the cemetery. I knelt on the grass beside her headstone and finally let myself really grieve for her. I'm so sorry, Lorraine, I whispered. I'm sorry I didn't realize what was happening to you. I'm sorry you suffered alone, confused and scared, while Belinda slowly killed you. You deserved so much better. I stayed there for a long time telling her about the trial, about how Belinda had been caught, about how I was trying to heal. The wind rustled through the trees and I swear I felt Lorraine's presence, felt her forgiveness and love surrounding me. I promise I won't let this make me bitter, I told her. I promise I'll keep trusting people, keep loving people, keep living fully. Because that's what you would want. That's who you raised me to be. I left flowers on her grave, yellow daisies because they were her favorite, and walked back to my car feeling lighter than I had in months. The money from Lorraine's estate eventually came to me after the legal proceedings were complete. It felt wrong somehow to benefit from her death, but my lawyer explained that Lorraine had wanted me to have it, had chosen me specifically because she trusted me to use it wisely. I donated a significant portion to organizations that help elder abuse victims, because that's what Lorraine had been, an abuse victim in her own home. I used some to pay off my house completely so I'd never have to worry about losing it. And I set up college funds for my future grandchildren, because Jessica had recently told me she and Robert were expecting. The rest I saved, living comfortably but modestly, the way Lorraine would have approved of. Every time I write a check or make a donation, I think of her and hope I'm honoring her memory the right way. 2 years after the trial, Jessica had her baby, a beautiful little girl they named Lorraine Margaret. When I held my granddaughter for the first time, looking into her tiny perfect face, I felt something I hadn't felt since before this nightmare began. Hope. Pure, uncomplicated hope for the future. Thank you, I told Jessica, tears streaming down my face. Thank you. Evil person was stopped. And I get to be here holding my granddaughter, watching sunsets, living a life Belinda tried to steal from me. That's my victory. Not revenge, not bitterness, but survival and joy and continued trust in the goodness that still exists in the world despite people like Belinda. To anyone listening to this who might be in a situation that doesn't feel right, please, trust your instincts. If someone is pressuring you to take medications that weren't prescribed to you, don't do it. If a relationship feels off, pay attention to that feeling. If you're experiencing symptoms that worry you, see a doctor immediately. Your life is worth protecting. Your intuition is worth listening to. And there are people, good people like Jessica and Dr. Chun and Detectives Rivera and Santos, who will help you if you ask. I was lucky. I had a daughter who wouldn't accept that I was fine when clearly I wasn't. I had medical professionals who were thorough and suspicious enough to dig deeper. I had a support system that held me up when I couldn't stand on my own. Not everyone has that. So be that person for someone else if you can. Ask the hard questions. Don't accept easy answers when something feels wrong. Pay attention to the people you love and notice when they're not acting like themselves. You might save a life. You might stop an evil person from hurting someone else. You might give someone the gift of justice and healing. 3 years ago, I almost died taking pills that were supposed to help me. But I didn't die. I lived. And every day I wake up and choose to keep living, fully and deeply and gratefully, is another day Belinda didn't win. That's my story. That's my truth. And if it helps even one person recognize danger or seek help or trust their instincts, then maybe all this pain had a purpose after all. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you to question things that seem off, if it encouraged you to pay attention to your loved ness in your own health, then please share it. Subscribe for more stories like this, stories about survival and justice, and the strength of the human spirit. Because these stories matter. They remind us that even in the darkest moments, even when evil seems to be winning, good people exist. Justice is possible, and survival is worth fighting for. Thank you for listening. Thank you for caring. And please take care of yourself and the people you love. Life is too precious to waste, too beautiful to let evil people steal it away. Hold on to it tightly, live it fully, and never stop fighting for your right to be here. God bless you all, and until next time, remember that you are stronger than you know, braver than you believe, and more loved than you can imagine. Claude is AI and can make mistakes. Please double-check responses.